Rule number one, don't open the door.
I need a little more up top and a little less down below.
Amber alert. Oh God, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. In orbit of Uranus,
It smells.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Oh, no, you love me. You know you love me.
Just don't let it touch the
You know, that's great, but give me a little more.
Why? Why are you shooting at me?
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, 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 out there in YouTube and podcast land. You are listening to Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror films and science fiction movies and those key elements that often lift and separate them from the average genre fare. Are you new to us? Well, welcome. We love having you. David and I are old friends. We talk about movies. We have talked about movies for God knows how long. Mm-hmm. And now we're doing it for you folks. This is not a scripted podcast. We may stammer. We may not sound as professional as I do right now. However, if you're coming back, you know this because you know anything goes. And we're glad to have you back as well. I am here with my good friend, David Horton. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. That was it was a very energetic intro for you.
It's a little bombastic.
Bombastic was a word I was struggling. You did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good. I like that. I've been doing good. We normally start with what we've been doing in our genre week, and I've been really busy work-wise, so I haven't had a chance to delve into a lot of stuff. But I did have time in the late night hours when I'm in my time to relax and get ready for the sleepy time of just going back to old comfort food. So it's like comfort viewing. So I caught up on a couple of more of our Star Trek, the original series, which we're doing on the Sister Pet cast. So I watched a couple of episodes of that just to catch up, but also
it was Patterns of Force, wasn't it?
It was some good ones, yeah. But that was one of them, yeah. And that inspired me because there's a lot with Straczynski now. He's doing some more comic books and writing more and everything else. So I switched over and watched a couple of episodes of B5 as well, which is, again, one of my favorite series of all time. And just the way it's told and structured, and I miss it. And now it's got a great new Blu-ray 4K versions are out. So they've been restored and all the graphics have been enhanced. So it works really well. But that's it. I just watched some old comfort food episodes. I didn't delve into anything new that I hadn't seen or anything that would take my mind away from trying to focus on like this episode and the next few that we've got coming up. So that's what I did genre week. What about you?
That's something I need to do. I mean, I do the comfort thing when we watch the episodes for that show on Patreon, but I haven't really. I mean, I guess when I watch old Hammer movies, that's like watching comfort movies, comfort food. My genre week, though, was a new movie. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not new. It's 10 years old, so it's newer. And it's one I have mentioned in, I think, a top 10, top 5, a couple of things back.
Okay.
It came out in 2013, and it's called We Are What We Are.
Okay, yeah.
This movie blew me away when I watched it. It's on the list, but I did not choose it for next season because I'm so far behind picking modern films that I was trying to pick ones that were a little bit that I had seen before this. Anyway.
Is this vampire? I hate to interrupt.
No.
Is this vampire? Okay, all right.
No, there is a plot spoiler I could give. It's not.
Well, don't if you don't want to. Don't do it.
Well, it's easy. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out. So let's just put it that way.
Okay.
It had been on my personal list for a while. I took advantage to catch it because of that top 5 we did. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it blew me away. It's directed by Jim Mickle. And he's the guy that directed. This is really funny. I keep getting all these Lansdale connections, but he directed an adaptation of Lansdale's novel, Cold in July. I have not seen it. It stars the guy from Dexter. I can't think of his name, Michael something.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I need to see it because he went on to adapt the Hap and Leonard series. So this guy's a big Lansdale fan, quite obviously.
Okay.
So there's a Lansdale connection with this movie, even though it's not a Lansdale property. The cast is marvelous. It stars Bill Sage, who I really don't know. He's in that picture behind. He looks a little like our old friend Joe Jackson. He was in Kill Bill, but I don't remember. Amber Childers, do you know her?
That name sounds awfully familiar.
She's the blonde in the picture behind me.
Uh-huh.
It stars Kelly McGillis, who I just mentioned a movie to you the other day that I saw Kelly McGillis in called The Innkeepers, directed by Ty West.
Yep.
She's in it, and a very young Wyatt Russell and Julia Garner are in it, and they are like becoming big stars now.
Okay.
And Kurt Russell, of course, Kurt Russell is Wyatt Russell's father. The synopsis is: the Parkers, reclusive people who cling to ancient customs, find their secret lives threatened when a torrential downpour and the death of the family matriarch forces daughters Iris and Rose to assume special responsibilities. I read that slow because you could kind of figure things out listening to that. This movie only gets 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. I would bump that up to a solid 90. The suspense is relentless at times, and the ending totally shocked me.
Really? Okay.
I couldn't quit thinking about it for days. I was shouting at the television, just squirming, and I don't know. It's been added to our master list. It's going to be on a season coming up soon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't be on the next one, but probably the next one because of rotation. But yeah.
And I still don't know what for some reason, I don't know why I was thinking they were vampires, but I guess they're something else. So
they're a backwoods family.
Okay, then.
And when the flood comes, things start washing up.
Yay. Okay,
Yeah.
Good. There you go. And now we're suddenly back on the road.
But it's not really like, I don't want to mislead you. It's not the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's got elements of that. It's more like heavy into like religious stuff too. It's wild, man.
You notice there's been a lot of that the past, like, what did you say? How old was this? 10 years?
Yeah, no, it's 2013. Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of those families with dark secret movies, whether it's your wedding night, so we're going to hunt you, or it's, you wake up and you suddenly have a collar around you and you're being most dangerous gamed by some freaking clan or something. So there's been a lot of that.
Or there's a cult that you all of a sudden realize you're being initiated into.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if we as society, as storytellers, we're struggling with this. What's our place with each other? How do we deal with each other? It's interesting because in times of financial or societal stress, we go to fantasy films, we go to science fiction or horror or whatever, but it's usually rooted in whatever's scaring or freaking us out or amazing us. So interesting. I'm just curious. Now I've got to watch it, but I don't want to watch it.
If you want to watch it before we cover it, you should, because I think you'll enjoy it. It's crazy. The cast alone carries the movie. I mean, you've got like I switched my background because I didn't know I was going to keep talking about it.
That's okay.
You've got a classic horror movie story, but you've got Julia Garner and Wyatt Russell and that Amber Childers. I mean, you've got great Kelly McGillis, great people in this movie, and that guy that I don't know that plays the father. He's great too. So yeah, it's worth seeing. And I mean, I would watch anything with Julia Garner in it. I think she's fabulous. Yeah. After Ozark, I'm just blown away by her. So
yeah. Well, there's no real segue out of that to our story today because we are dealing with.
We're dealing with differences, and this was a different family.
There you go. Yeah, we're dealing with learning each other's differences. We are covering a science fiction film today, and I'm very curious to get Tim's reaction to this movie. It came out in 1985. Its final director was Wolfgang Petersen, written by Edward Kamara. It's based on a novella by Barry Longyear, who actually published it in about 10 years earlier. I think it was like in 75 or 79, somewhere in there, in Isaac Asimov's magazine. And it actually won a Hugo and a Nebula Award. And I actually, in researching this, read that novella because it was pretty short. And just to see what was inspired, what was different, what was changed, because I can tell you this was not the first time I've seen this movie. I've seen it a few times. I think it's the third time I've seen it. But I remembered it fonder than it was when I watched it this time, but that's just my opinion. Had you seen this movie before?
Well, what is this movie called?
It's called Enemy Mine. Stars Louis Gossett Jr. as Jariba Shigan, and Willis C. Davidge is played by Dennis Quaid. It also has a really early, brief cameo by Lance Kerwin in it, and I'd forgotten his whole
Actually,
name.
it's not an early one. It's a late one.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd forgotten his name. As soon as I saw him, I went, "Oh wow, I remember him." That's
I went, Mark Petrie. Oh my God! Watch out, Danny Glick's trying to get in your window.
Yeah, don't put a spacesuit on him. Go ahead. So yes, it's called Enemy Mine. Had you seen this before?
Yes, I don't remember the exact. I'm fairly certain I saw this on video with you. I did not see it in a movie theater. So we probably rented it, is my guess, because you would have rented it before me, I think.
Yes.
Although the poster, the Louis Gossett looks kind of menacing in that poster.
Yes.
So that may have made me want to rent it too. I remember not being very thrilled with it when I first saw it, which is why I had never seen it again. But watching it in HD, like I did the other night, I actually have more of an appreciation for it now. The message is great. It's just heavy hammered in the script.
Yep.
And the special effects and stuff and makeup. Well, the makeup on Louis Gossett's great, but the makeup on Dennis Quaid's horrible, and the rest of the special effects are really bad too, I think.
I like the special effects. I like the model work. I like the dogfight work. I think the production design's pretty good. It's better than Galaxy of Terror.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the music's just as bad as Galaxy of Terror.
Oh my! Well, okay. So this movie. Okay. Well, once we get into production of it, there's a lot of production history that I'll cover when we get to it. But it's very interesting watching it again. Like I said, this is my third time watching it because I remember seeing it on VHS with you. I remember seeing it again. And my takeaways this time are I'm rationalizing or looking back at them and trying to realize what I liked, what I didn't, why I did, why I remember this movie, why it's on the list, why did I put it on the list. Louis Gossett Jr., A+, he's a crystal for this. He's great. He's awesome. He's excellent in this movie. The makeup is really, really good in this movie. The first third of it, I really like, although to your point, yes, it's heavy-handed. Once Louis Gossett dies, I repressed the rest of this movie every time I've watched it because it really sucks really badly after that.
He's the star. I mean, he carries the film.
Even though the star and the POV is really Dennis
Quaid. Yeah.
But the amount of work that Gossett Jr. put into this and trying to make this character so realistic and believable and everything and what he did, and we'll get into that once we start talking about casting and all that, but is great. But once he's gone, the story just goes in all kinds of stupid directions. And I found out a lot doing research on it why. But I always remember, Enemy Mine, it's really good. Start watching it again, and it happens to me all three times it's happened. Oh yeah, da-da-da. And then he suddenly dies, and you go, what's happening now? What? We're playing football? We're really playing football on the alien planet. And then we have all these time cuts that make no freaking sense. And you're going, how much time is passing? This kid grows overnight, really? And it just strange things happen.
Yeah, I have questions about Wolfgang.
Okay, so brief history about it. So, like I said, it started as a novella, a very well recognized and awarded novella. And the novella is really good, and the ending is totally freaking different. So there is no mine, there is no mining, there is no scavengers, there's none of that in the novel.
Oh, I never even realized that that's what that was. And no wonder, because I was like, why is he called Enemy Mine? Is it because he's my enemy?
Yeah. Well, I've always equated it as my enemy is mine, is my enemy, and trying to appreciate your enemy, right? However, you hinted on one of the big things from production. That all of that last stuff was added by 20th Century Fox in the studio because they said audiences will not understand a movie titled Enemy Mine unless you have a mine in it. You have to have a literal miners.
And I didn't even realize it. I mean, I know it was a mine, but it didn't even occur to me when I was watching it.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the freaking title and the novella and the story that he was trying to tell. So, again, studio involvement. So, anyway, this movie was bought up by 20th Century Fox. They had it. They decided they would get some stars for it. So they got Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. They had him on contract. It was great. He had just come off of Officer and a Gentleman, so they were really happy about that because he's an Academy Award winner now.
Right.
And they went into production of it with director Richard Longcrane. Richard Longcrane was from Brimstone and Treacle. That was his biggest contribution prior to this. He was a British director. He spent $9 million in developing the production, the spaceships, the models, the miniatures, the makeup. They filmed in Iceland. After 3 weeks of filming, the studio said, this sucks.
Yeah, I heard about this. Yeah.
They said, this sucks. This is horrible. And they fired him.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, 20th Century Fox is undergoing management change. So you had, what's his name? Lawrence Gordon. Lawrence Gordon took over as head of production at 20th Century. And now he has great cred. Later on, he goes on to do stuff like Die Hard, 48 Hours, Predator. So he's a pretty good action-y pop bubblegum movie producer. He really wanted to keep these two stars. He wanted to do this property. He thought it'd be really good. He needed a director for it. So he went out searching the bushes for directors. He offered it to David Lynch first. David Lynch was hot at the time just because he had just finished doing Dune. So
that movie tanked, didn't it?
Correct. But Gordon thought, hey, that movie sucks so bad, he would have to do better with a very small, intimate story of just two people, not the big war story. This will be great. Plus, it's alien, and Lynch is good at that weird stuff. So let's put him in there. David Lynch said no, mostly because he was still stinging from Dune, probably.
I'm sure.
They offered it to, next, a brilliant science fiction director who you would think would be perfect, Terry Gilliam.
I remember reading that.
Terry Gilliam, was a wrong fit anyway, but he was doing Barry Munchausen, so he couldn't.
I thought he was doing Brazil.
Oh, sorry, Brazil. You're right.
Yeah, because that was like his sci-fi thing he was working on or something. Yeah.
And then they landed on Wolfgang Petersen. Wolfgang Petersen is a good director, in my opinion. We've covered him a couple of times on the podcast, for good or for bad, at different times. But he did, right now, at this point, he was sailing off the success of Das Boot, which was probably one of the best submarine movies ever made. It's awesome. It's great. I recommend it. Not genre for us, but a really good submarine movie. However, he said, no, I don't want to do a Star Wars movie. I'm not going to do a Star Wars space battle movie. They sent him the script. Stuart Gordon sent him the script. He read the script and said, wait, this isn't a space battle movie. I'd love to do it, but I'm right in the middle of this other little thing called Never Ending Story. So I'm directing it right now and I can't do it.
And that was a hit.
Well, they wouldn't know at the time. They're just filming it.
They wouldn't have known. I hate that movie.
Lawrence, I keep saying Stewart. It's not Stewart, it's Lawrence. Lawrence Gordon ended up putting both of his leads on hold contracts and paying them, even though they weren't working, until Petersen could finish Never-Ending Story and start pre-production and get almost 8 months of just paying them for free, just to stay. Don't agree to any other movies. We don't know when he's going to be finished, but when he's finished, we're going to jump right into Enemy Mine. So Wolfgang Petersen came aboard, finished Never-Ending Story, came aboard, looked at everything that had been shot for the past 3 weeks and all the production, and said, "Yeah, sucks.
It's out." So all that they filmed was tossed.
Yeah, $8 million worth of.
Yeah, I mean, this
stuff.
movie basically cost double what it should have, probably.
Yeah. Well, they had originally budgeted 18 million for it, but 8 was already spent. So now you've got 10 million to redesign the makeup, redesign the production, rebuild sets, look for new photography. So
locations,
he switched from Iceland to the Canary Islands. He moved from Budapest to Germany, set up because he already had a relationship with Germany. He'd been there for a year shooting Never-Ending Story. So
well, he is German, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. But helped out that studio and everything else. But the only reason he would agree to finally sign on the dotted line was if he could scrap everything else and do his own story. And went back to even screenplay changes and everything else. And I'm pretty sure part of the give and take was, okay, Wolfgang, we gave you all this money. We paid all these actors to wait. We did all this for you. You got to redesign together. So throw Brian James in at the end, would you? And maybe add some minors and maybe have a big fight at the end that makes no freaking sense.
The minute I saw him, I was like, when?
Win Thompson's least favorite actor of all time.
David and I have a friend in common that hates this actor, like for no real rational reason, just loathes him.
Well, he hates his style, the way he always does that. I'm looking to the side, looking down at you because I'm a big bad guy kind of thing that he does. Wynn goes, the only bad thing about Blade Runner is that particular casting.
Yeah, he didn't like the little guy either that liked Chris. The little he's not a fan of that guy either. But anyway, aside from that, I've got some notes on Brian James when we'll get to casting. Yeah.
Okay. But that basically, they went into production. The makeup was designed and is wonderful. It was designed by Chris Wallace. You probably recognize him because he's done a lot of other stuff. Like he did Scanners, Tim. He did the makeup for Scanners. He did Raiders of the Lost Ark, the whole melting final stuff. Gremlins, The Fly, Arachnophobia. All of that's Chris Wallace. Brilliant. He was a really good makeup artist for a while there. And then
his name was very popular in the 80s. Like Kevin Yeager was very popular in the 80s too. Yeah.
Yep. But so the original makeup took 7 hours to apply, and they shot for 7 months. So Louis Gossett Jr.'s face, it's the same stories we've heard about. The same thing with Freddy Krueger. I mean, the guy that played Freddy Krueger, sorry, cannot think of his name right now.
Robert Englund.
Yeah. With his face becoming sensitive and hurting and all the glue. I mean, 7 hours to apply, 2 to take off. They ended up, after a few months, being able to get it down to 4 hours to apply and 2 to take off, but still way too long. But it is so convincing. It still holds up today. Like you said, you watched a 4K version. I love the fact that his sacs on his ears breathe and move, and just he has a singular tooth that goes all the way in the front. It's a cool design. Even the skull later on that we see of a Drac is a cool design.
And the teeth, I'm sure, were a pain in the ass to have. But he did a really good job of freeing his mouth to speak because it looks good. It doesn't look like it looks like a layer of a wrinkle or something going around his mouth.
The way he wrinkled the layers like a lizard. Because, I mean, we didn't do a synopsis of this, but basically this is My Soldier is My Friend as well. Set in the future when Earth is having a war with the Drac, who are a reptilian race. They're equally matched. They each claim rights to various planets.
Yeah, they're both humans, and the Dracs are trying to conquest other planets because their own planets are not doing so hot.
Right. Yeah. So they enter into an interstellar war. During one dogfight at the beginning, both of them are shot down over Fyrene 4, which is a semi-volcanic planet. And they end up having to learn to survive together and get over their racial and prejudicial differences. So thematically, a cool story, a basic plot. It's only like halfway through that it totally loses direction and suddenly turns into
a kid movie.
raise your son and fight these scavengers, and it just gets really
But I mean, even
lost.
though I mean the movie about, I mean the message about racism is it's a good message about how we see other people. But like I said, it's so heavy hammered. Dennis Quaid's dialogue in the beginning of this, he's constantly calling him a frog and things that would seem ultra sensitive if you just took it out of that context and put it into a modern context or with another race of humans. He sounds like a total asshole racist, basically.
And he should. In the novella, he does too. He's
Okay.
extraordinarily prejudicial.
Mm.
And the novella follows how do you get over that racism that you have. But the novella, the last part of the novella is so much better than this movie
I'm sure.
because he does get separate. He does raise Javish. He raises the kid up to a certain level, and then he gets separated from him. And he gets rescued, and it's all about him trying to convince the Earth people that the Drac are not as horrible as we think they are. And and he's trying to face systemic racism in all of Earth of what he used to be. And he finally rebels against Earth, goes to Drac, and he finds the counter prejudice there, that they feel the same way about humans. And it's only through him talking to him, finally going and saying that he can speak Drac and he can do the lineage. So he literally goes to the altar, the worship temple, and does the lineage. And that's what convinces them to look up the family. And they find that Javich was also rescued, but he has been proclaiming how humans are so wonderful forever that they put him in a psychiatric institution. And it's the very end of the novella is them going and not rescuing, but getting him out. And Davich goes and lives with them back on Firene. They relocate the whole lineage, the whole family of Shigan, and they go to Firene 4. And that's how it ends, with them living together.
And have you heard of Barry Longyear? Was he like on the radar for Sci-Fi? The guy that wrote the story?
No. This was like his one and only, as far as I know. He was not, and I've not read anything else by him.
Because the guy that did the screenplay, I noticed, also did Lady Hawk, which is a good movie that's on our list as well.
Richard Kamara, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think he was much better with Lady Hawk than he was with this script.
Yeah.
This script, I mean, even the narration.
Well, it sounds to me like the studio changed it.
I think they did. I think 20th Century really had all, because to your point you said earlier, so original budget was 18 million. They spent 8 that they had to punt. So that gave them 10. When it came back, Wolfgang said, I need more to finish it. Ended it up at $29 million in 1985.
And yet they couldn't afford anything but yak hair to glue to Dennis Quaid's face and head.
Yeah. Yeah.
He looks like Chaka from Land of the Lost.
Yep. And later on, he's in that bad cowboy long coat shotgun scene in the mine. And I'm going, what kind of freaking costuming is that? This makes no sense.
You know? Oh, yeah. Poor Louis Gossett. They shouldn't have killed him off.
I think there's a lot more that they could have done. That was my big feeling taken from this. If I was doing the David rewrite of it, I would spend a lot more with them being adversarial and a lot more nuance to what they see and don't see in each other. So let's examine the prejudice rather than it being just the language, because that's what it seemed to be. We went for a funny gag of, no, you stupid head.
Mickey Mouse dumb.
Mickey Mouse dumb.
Yeah.
Now that literally is from the novella, though, by the way.
I think it's funny, actually.
He does think that Mickey Mouse is some great religious leader to the Earth people, which he is to some, I know. But I think they could have spent a lot more in developing their appreciation of each other's society rather than it being so we have to band together to fight the environment, which is basically what they did. That's a trope. That's an easy trope to try to do.
Or the monsters on the planet.
Yeah. But it's really weird because it also reminded me, is there a Mandela effect? Because I suddenly went, oh, this is an old trope where two soldiers are shot down and they have to become friends with each other. Like a Japanese soldier and an American soldier on an island in World War II. I'm sure that's a movie. And I went looking up, went, no, that's not really a movie. I can't find a reference to that. And I thought, oh, well, then it's probably a slave and his master who end up being somehow trapped and they have to realize that they're each good people and realize the values of the other. No, I couldn't find that anywhere either. So I went, do I have some weird Mandela effect of keys that don't exist?
I have a
trope?
Mandela effect with this movie in general. I always confuse it with The Hidden because they came out around the same time, I think.
The Hidden, that's the one with the alien taking over the bodies, right?
I don't remember. I don't know. It's on our list. I can't remember it. It's one of those like this that I only saw once, but they came out at the same time. And for some reason, Enemy Mine and The Hidden just merged to me.
I think you watched them one night together on VHS,
probably
just right after each other. But yeah,
I think The Hidden came out 2 years later, though. I think it's a little younger. But anyway.
I mean, so, and then I'll get off my soapbox, but look at look at Dances with Wolves. That's an examination of him hating that culture and then suddenly actually becoming part of it. So much so that he marries, has kids, and ends up becoming one of them by the end of it. Look at A Man Called Horace, when he has to go native, essentially, to do it. Robert Redford in the one about where he becomes the winter man or the wild guy. But that would have been more interesting than them throwing in all of this crap at the end with the scavengers and the slavery and the things that really make, I mean, I took note after note after note of this makes no freaking sense. Just little bits together of he just happens to stumble upon the prisoner's cell. Oh, he just happens to have a pry bar right there to open up for David so he can rescue. Oh, that happens to be the time when Brian James and his bad guys come in to find him. And it just really bad plotting, bad writing, doesn't work. And the music, to your point, doesn't help at all, which shocked me. Shocked me. This is Maurice Jarre. This is the guy that did Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago. He did every most of Hitchcock movies that weren't done by Bernstein.
Bernard Herrmann, you mean?
By Bernard Herrmann, yeah. This guy has a huge credit of music, and this music sucks all the way through.
It's awful.
It is.
I know.
Terrible.
The whole time I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, this is The Last Starfighter. I mean, it's just...
it's just bad. It's not appropriate for the scenes that work. It's grandiose when it doesn't need to be. I've even got that birth scene was not as good as the music thought it was.
No, the best scenes, we never did do scenes.
Okay.
And the best scenes in this movie are after the initial caricature racism.
Mm-hmm.
Once they are friends, any scene between Louis Gossett and Dennis Quaid is good.
Yes.
Because they are both quality actors, especially Louis Gossett, who's doing it in a mask, basically.
Yeah. Even his eyes he had 2 sets of contact lenses.
Yes. And I mean, and he has that big old thing that makes him look like he's got 2 giant front teeth. So, it's hard to talk, but they are great. And like I said, only those scenes really, to me, stand out in this movie.
Yes. I have basically 3. I do like the opening battle. I like the way it's shot, the way it's done, although I don't like the fact that they're wearing stupid helmets that look like they're from a bad early 60s sci-fi show. I like the first lake encounter. Like I love the
lake encounter is great.
The way we first encounter the dragon.
It's a Star Trek set. It's just high budget. It's great.
Yeah. And that is an interior. That's a studio lake. They built a lake inside for that. But yeah.
Right.
And any of the scenes with them, they just work. Their chemistry together and the way the subtlety of each other. Even down once they become friends and he puts the book on him and he's like, no, man. I don't know. Just his reaction to it without saying anything. And him going, the only way to learn is to wear it. Now you're the teacher. Now I'm the teacher, you're the student. works for me, but no other scenes in this movie work.
Well, the horrific scene to me that sticks out, of course, is when that monster comes up out of the pit and grabs his leg. It looks a lot worse than it actually is.
No, it looks a lot worse. There's two shots they should have cut because it looks like it is ripping the muscles off of his bone.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to have a skeletal foot, the way that
Correct.
thing is pulling him. This is Dennis Quaid, folks, for those of you that hadn't seen it. And the Louis Gossett character rescues him. But when he's patched up later, I mean, basically they're just putting a cloth on it. And it's a bandage. He's up walking around. I'm like, it looked like that thing hurt his leg a lot worse, I remember.
And see, to me, you could have had an entire sequence of alien healing,
Right.
and that could have been another Bond for them. But no, we just went with this really cliche, bad Sarlacc pit creature.
But I like that monster, even though it's cheap looking. Everything about that scene reminds me of like Star Trek. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a unique creature, even though it's fake looking, and it's a cool scene. Suspenseful. Yep. It's just like the little things that they eat. Those things turtles, too are cool. Yeah. The triples. What'd you call them?
Turtles. But
yeah, they look like turtles or trilobites or something. Yeah.
Well, I equate, as soon as I saw the first one, I said, okay, this is a variation of the thing in Khan that they put in the ear.
You're right. It's the larger version. I mean?
It looks like a larger version of that, even down to the way the makeup is done, or the creature design, I guess. So, yeah. Yeah. So there's that.
So those are my scenes. Anything that they do together calmly, and anything in that scene where Dennis Quaid gets his leg almost yanked off, basically.
Yeah. And to me, it's the other ones. It's like both of them sitting there, and he finally teaches him the lineage, but the lineage has to be sung. And now he's teaching him the song, and they're both just up on that rock outcropping. Looks really cool. And they're watching the sunset, and they're just both singing together. That bonding worked for me. I loved all of their chemistry. It was great.
Oh, I tell you, this sticks out too, because it's just funny to me that he hates. What is the Louis Gossett character? It starts with a J.
Jariba.
Uh-huh. When he's swimming and Dennis Quaid decides, I'm just going to pour gas or whatever that is all over the lake and set it on fire and kill that bastard. So you see Louis Gossett come up out of the water, and Quaid is going to steal his gun, which is left on the ship because there's no one else there. He doesn't know somebody's spying on him. And then the lake's on fire. He runs to get it, and all of a sudden he's electrocuted, man. That sticks out to me too, because I was like, yeah, he deserves that, man.
Oh yeah.
And the whole time he's there, he can't let go. Lewis lets that, or Jariba lets that go for a while.
Oh yeah,
let him get shocked for a while.
And he slowly walks up on him and everything.
Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah, Gossett Jr. is just not only the makeup design is great, but he's the one that suggested all of the guttural stuff and and all that. And Wolfgang let him do it because he could do that. And all of that was, they used no audio effects or audio mixing for that. All of his dialect he did himself, which is awesome and great.
He's a wonderful actor. I've always loved him.
When they went back and hired, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if it was when they restarted production or if it was originally for the part, but he spent a month in Germany with a mime, a dancer, and an athlete, trying to work out different ways to walk, to move, to do stuff, because he said, I wanted this to be alien, but not to seem so odd or humorous that it would take away from his character. He spent so much wanting this character to be alive, and that's great, and it shows.
It does show. I mean, it's another race. It becomes he becomes less of a creature and more just someone of another race.
Yeah,
from another planet, and it's awesome.
So, White Elephant, do you think there was a reason they cast an African American actor in that role?
I don't know. Was it originally that way?
Well, in the novella, it doesn't mention. Of course,
No,
'cause
I
it's a
mean,
different race.
was it with the footage they shot? Was that with the same two
Yeah.
actors?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
So
I
that's
couldn't.
why I use that as a bridge to casting. Did they cast him? Were there other considerations?
Well, that would fall into the heavy-handed thing that I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, it also maybe they feared repercussions if they didn't. I don't know.
Was he the first choice for that role?
That's a good question because I was going to segue into cast.
Yeah.
No, he was not, but it was another African American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that makes sense. They definitely wanted an African American in that role.
I think so. I think they were trying to originally say a lot about prejudice and in the 80s and the fact that it was still there.
Well, and honestly, I said this, but I didn't mean it. That to me is not really heavy-handed. What's heavy-handed is Dennis Quaid's caricature of a racist to begin with. That just, that's heavy hammered. The music is heavy hammered, things like that. We can go into cast if you want to go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I do have stuff, obviously. Dennis Quaid, we know him from The Right Stuff, which is one of your favorite movies, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Inner Space, Far From Heaven, which is one of my favorite of his movies. That's a Todd Haynes movie, and I'm a big Todd Haynes fan. Plays David. I didn't know, but he was married 4 times. We always associate that he was married to Meg Ryan. They divorced in 2001, like 20 something years ago.
Okay.
And they had 1 kid, but he has had 2 since with another wife. But the one that interests me is his first wife. Do you know who his first wife was?
I do not.
PJ Souls.
Wow. From Halloween?
Yes, Linda. Now I get your famous chewing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's her. The one with the ball cap that says "See what you like" and all that stuff in Halloween, one of my favorite movies. Anyway, that's all I really have on Quaid because I think most of us are familiar with him. I think he's great. I just think there are 2 things against him in this. One is probably youth, because I do think he plays those scenes too caricaturishly in the beginning, and it's just inexperience. And then 2, wow, I forgot what my second one was.
But they both played against it.
Maybe it'll come to me. Anyway, I had another reason why I think. Anyway.
Well, you said married several times, going back to the personal stuff. He's also known in Hollywood for the age gap thing because his current wife, I think he's been married to her for like 3 or 4 years now. She's like almost 40 years younger than him. Okay.
Yes, they got married in 2020. Her name is Laura Savoy or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. He's like, anytime you see age gap anywhere, he always comes up on the list. Like DiCaprio does with his 27-year-old or whatever. They have to be this only 2 years difference old thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I think, going back to your point then, yes, I think his age as an actor at this point, he was used to not doing a lot of layers, everything being very blunt.
He was the young hot stuff. He was Tom Cruise, basically, just the poor man's, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the character he plays in Right Stuff. He's the hothead. He's the go get him. He's the I'm the kind of the stupid, goofy one. And that's what he plays here. And I agree with you. I think screenplay wise, it needed a little bit more subtlety, a little bit more realistic racism.
Yeah, I mean, say it under your breath and not shout it. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to see it that aggressively done to know that you're a bad person.
Well, and they started, actually it's Wolfgang's fault because he starts it with the whole chasing him down to the planet like a maniac.
And even his other astronaut friends in the squadron are going, what is Davitt doing? Why is he chasing him? And it's,
And I think the second thing I was going to say is the makeup because his makeup is just awful. It looks so bad. It's distracting. It's so funny that Lewis's makeup is so good and he's so different and it's not distracting at all. But Dennis Quaid's makeup is human, and he is distracting.
Yeah, I do think it works when it's in his final incarnation.
The Kurt Russell stage.
The full beard with the full hair and everything.
When it's soft looking, it's like
Yeah.
a hair commercial. Yeah, that looks fine to me. It's that picture behind me, and the beard especially. The beard it looks like animal hair. It does not look real. It does not look human.
Yeah,
anyway,
no, it's bad application.
Louis Gossett Jr., as we said, played Drac. Okay, Drac is what they call him. I keep wanting to say his name, but they did call him Drac. He called him Drac, right?
No, he called him Jerry because his name is Jariba.
Why do they list him as Drac?
Because he is a Drac.
He is a Drac, but that's not his name.
No, they're from Dracone, they say, which is the name of the planet.
They're a good Star Trek alien. There's a lot about this in Star Trek.
Well, but actually, I'll get to it in keys.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Well, first of all, we know Louis Gossett Jr. probably originally from Roots. That would probably have been the first time I saw him. He was also in An Officer and a Gentleman. He was in Jaws 3D with Dennis Quaid, almost around the same time. And he also was in a movie with moi. He was in Goodbye, Miss 4th of July, a Disney movie that I was an extra in back in 1988.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know, doing research, he actually appeared on Broadway when he was like 17.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, 7. Sorry, 7 in my notes was his first time on Broadway. His first. So that's pretty incredible. Really. Yeah.
Well, and he won an Academy Award for An Officer and a Gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
So he's an Oscar winner. Do you know who he took that role away from, or who turned it down and he got it?
No.
Jack Nicholson.
That's a great movie.
It is a great movie. I mean, he's great in it for sure.
Richard Gere, who was never one of my favorites until later on in his career, I thought was even good in it. It's a really good, strong movie.
Way to go, Paula.
Who is it? The David Keith is in that from Knoxville.
And he's from Knoxville. We went to school with him.
We did. Yeah, we did.
Oh, wow. Or at least you did. I think he was graduated by the time I was there.
I did. I remember David Keith. So
I mentioned that this role was Officer and Gentleman that he ended up being cast when Jack turned it down.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that there was someone else up for this part of Jariba before he was.
Yeah.
And it was Grace Jones.
You wouldn't have had the chemistry, I don't think. But it is interesting that they considered that from.
I mean, I love Grace Jones, but she's not a great actress.
No.
I love her music.
They considered it, though, because the Drac are asexual. Having her play a masculine alien
which would be easy. Yeah.
Would have been interesting.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Let's do a remake with RuPaul.
Well, she turned it down because she was busy shooting A View to a Kill, because at that time she was doing movies because of Conan the Destroyer.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And she was the original African-American that was considered. And I guess it would have been fine it being a female because it's, what's the word? They're asexual?
They're asexual. I said that. Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if that's the right term. Louis Gossett Jr. has a foundation devoted to eradicating racism. Did you know that?
No, but it's
Do you know what it's called? Guess.
I do not know. EM. No.
Racism.
Eracism. Oh, cool.
I thought that was cool. Anyway.
I do like that.
Brian James. Well, I could hear Wendell all the way in Georgia.
I don't know about you, but yeah,
he's so bad. And what's with the like weird hair, like facial hair, and even his brother is weird with the earring. I don't know. It's so 80s.
It was like we encountered a really bad 80s biker gang in urban.
Yeah, it's Chicago. Like this movie took a hard left turn into Jared Sin, Metal Storm, or whatever.
Very well done. Yes, that's good. Yes, it just does not work at all.
Brian James is somewhat of a favorite character actor of directors. He did 5 movies with Walter Hill.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Blade Runner. I think the last time we saw him was in The Fifth Element. I know we watched it for a podcast a few years back. I did find out something interesting about him. He lived in Beaumont, California, between Los Angeles and Palm Springs, where his parents built and operated a movie theater. So occasionally stars would go out there to see films, I guess, so that they could get away from the hassle of going. And he knew Gene Autry because Gene Autry was a regular at his parents' movie theater.
Well, big damn deal. No, I mean,
I think that would inspire a kid to want to get into movies because he was probably a little kid. I mean, Gene Autry, way older, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, but that still doesn't mean you'll be a good.
No, it doesn't. Well, David Keith's not good either. Whoops, did I say that?
Oops. Yeah, but that's true.
And he was an Officer and a Gentleman. So anyway.
It's so, yeah, I mean, he's part of the problem with this movie, in my opinion, that whole latter part of it. I mean, in my watch notes, I've got, wow, wouldn't they just shoot him out of the sky at that point? The survey ship finds the body, but it doesn't find the scavengers and all the Drac prisoners and everything else. Now suddenly this movie is a Rambo movie. Why did this happen? It just makes no sense. Now, do you have casting for the boy, for Javich?
I do. Before I get there, build slightly higher, and I don't know why. I guess because he's done more movies, is Richard Marcus, who played Arnold. I think that is the Brian James character's brother.
Who had 3 lines?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, he was in Tremors, and I'm like, he must have been somebody that got eaten early on because I don't remember him. I like that movie.
Yeah.
So anyway, the kid was played by a guy named Bumper Robinson.
Okay.
And the only other thing I have for him is that he was a bus passenger in Speed. Which is funny because he was one of those frightened people saying, "No, Sandra, don't slow down."
Well, an element from the novella that they lost too, which I liked, was there's a little bit more with Jamis and Davich. Because he is his surrogate parent. So he's having to try to teach him and also teach him about his father and or his parent, as he ends up calling him, the parent. But there's a really cool thing with the language, and I had in my notes here, wow, they jumped to English really fast. Well, I guess they had to because it's a movie in America.
I agree. That would not happen because that's a totally different language and planet. And yeah.
And there's a scene in the movie they keep, which is similar to the one in the novel, where he's talking about the differences. I have 3 fingers, you have 5, blah blah blah. We don't.
Those are good scenes,
and that scene worked. There's also a lot more or a little bit more in the novella where he says, "Okay, this word means finger," and then he'll say like "tarilla" or whatever. He'll say the Drac word for it.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamis gets upset because he's going, "Why do I have to know 2?" And he goes, "Because you are 2. You have to know 2."
That's great. They should have left that in.
And that was awesome. And it just leads to the whole ending, which makes the novella work really well, which is 2 cultures embracing each other. And they totally lost that when they turned into Rambo.
There's one more cast member we have to mention. Lance Kerwin is in this movie.
Yep.
He was Mark Petrie, as we mentioned, in Salem's Lot, but he really got famous earlier in a TV series called James at 16.
James at 16, yep.
I think it was James at 15, and then it became James at 16.
Yeah,
like naturally evolved.
Yep.
He had, I didn't put any of this in my notes, but as I was reading, he didn't have the greatest of lives. He was a chemically dependent person. He died
I didn't
young.
know that.
Yeah, he died when he was like 50, I want to say. or
I
even
wonder
younger.
why he dropped out of film really quickly.
Yeah,
too.
he did like I want to say he may have even started his own rehab clinic to help people and stuff.
Okay.
It's weird how a lot of people do that because they've talked about Matthew Perry doing the same, and he died recently for similar reasons.
Yeah.
But okay. Anyway, we'll move on to awards. The I'm I'm not going to say none. The Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror, the Saturn Awards, nominated for film, for actor, Gossett, and for makeup. Of course, that's easy. The Avoriaz Fantastic Film Festival, which I have talked about before, it was a French festival between the years of 1973 and 1993, gave it 3 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Gave it the CST Award, which I have no idea what that is, the Antenna Award, which I have no idea what that is, and the Grand Prize. Ooh. And I think that's nepotism, for a lack of a better word, because it's Europe and it's Wolfgang Petersen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's French, but it's very close to Germany. The Hugos nominated it for Best Dramatic Presentation, but the only wins it got were those few European ones from an obscure festival.
Yeah, and like the Oscars and the BAFTAs and all that at that time didn't have makeup awards, but it should have at least been nominated or won.
Oh, I agree. That's true.
Creature design, because that's a huge standout of this movie. But yeah, I can imagine it not winning anything. It bombed at the box office.
Did it really?
Yeah, Lawrence Gordon and 20th Century Fox wanted it so badly that they put $20 million into marketing. So the budget for this is listed at like $42 million.
I thought it was higher than what you said. Okay.
Yeah. That's with the marketing budget, these poster designs and all this stuff, and an international push, and a trailer that had the narrator on the trailer is Doctor Who. Oh, one of the big Doctor Who at that time was the narrator for.
You just brought me to something that bugs me.
What bugs you?
Narration.
All the way through this.
This movie starts with omniscient narration.
Correct.
That's morphs into narration by Dennis Quaid,
which makes no sense.
Then at the very end, another narration that we've never heard, and I'm like, who is narrating this fucking movie?
Yeah, the narrative POV is bad in this and should not have happened. At the very least, it should have been Dennis Quaid, Zdavich's character, narrating the whole thing, if you're going to do that. But you didn't need it. Even in the scene where they have it with Dennis Quaid, you didn't need it.
No.
You didn't need him to say, well, eventually we would have to work together. We can see that. Show, don't tell. You don't have to say that. But anyway, the movie domestically and internationally grossed $12 million.
And they spent 42.
Yeah.
And that's with everything.
That's
the second production and
production,
advertising. Okay.
So yeah, they lost a butt ton of money on this movie.
Well, Louis Gossett and Dennis Quaid didn't. They made pretty good money on it.
They sat back for 7 months going, okay, let's wait till Wolfgang.
Pina colada. Yeah.
Put umbrella in it. Umbrella. Which again, I still love. I could watch just the first half hour of this movie again, just to enjoy the two of them, but especially Gossett Jr. in the role.
Right.
I mean, I have such humorous. I want to send you my watch notes because I really like them. I think they're funny.
Well, then you should publish a book of watch notes.
What are all these time gaps going? Why does the cavalry magically appear now? That's bad music for a reunion. I just have to tell you, it's really bad music.
Yeah, I don't know that I wrote them down there in my head, but I was like, who's this narrator? Another narrator?
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going on? And what is with that beard? Oh, my God.
Well, the music seems to be saying it's time for a prisoner revolt.
Yeah. Oh, and I talked about cast, and in this picture here, I don't know any of these actors other than Dennis Quaid, but that girl looks just like Ali Sheedy.
Yeah, she does.
It's not her, but it looks like her. Ali was much more popular by then.
Well, keep that picture because one of my keys is, so this is where Verhoeven got the idea for Starship
The wild
Troopers.
one?
No, they look like Starship Troopers.
Oh, they look like that. That is the jacket Marlon Brando wore in the wild one. I mean, it is. They look like a motorcycle gang.
Yep. But that's
my key.
That's their second generation uniforms. The other ones they wear are white.
Yeah, at the beginning.
Pilots. Yeah.
When Mark Petrie bites the dust.
Okay, so keys. Do you have any keys?
Yes, the wild one with Marlon Brando.
Yeah, that's a perfect one.
Well, of course, I'm going to start with the written material. The source material is the novella that it was based on, written by Barry Longyear. It won the 1980 Hugo Award for Best Novella. So it's a very well appreciated piece of work.
And it's well written. I recommend it.
Right.
So read it. I've got, of course, what I just said is I think Paul Verhoeven was influenced by this movie to do Starship Troopers. Design-wise, production-wise, everything being clean and sleek and neat and all that in the design, except he had much better special effects for his movie, but not as good makeup. Well, better gore makeup, I think. But anyway.
And you said Starship Troopers?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I get it.
I've got Rambo, of course, because I mentioned it, because that's what this movie devolves to at the end of trying to rescue the hostages. Rambo 2 or Rambo 3. Ironically,
Rambo is 2. First Blood is 1.
First Blood, Rambo 2. But we always argue that because it's Rambo 3.
Oh, is that really how they did it? I didn't realize that. Okay. Yeah. Funny.
I've got in my notes an influence on this or a key influence on the Defiant Ones. Do you remember that with Sidney Poitier?
It's him and Tony Curtis. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very similar.
It's a dead on key. If you want to, it really is, because they escape from prison and they're handcuffed together.
And they hate each other to begin with. And and it's about how they have to slowly start working together and learn to appreciate each other.
Yeah, that's one of those movies I watched with my mother. I just don't remember it because I haven't seen it since.
Yep.
But yeah.
I've got Ender's Game, because it's very similar to this in the fact of the galactic battle against these evil ones that we loathe and hate. And by the end of the first novel, we're slowly starting to understand them. By the end of the trilogy, we're totally morphing with them again.
I have Robinson Crusoe on Mars.
Great
because those of you, spoiler alert, for 70 years ago, this movie is about a guy stranded on Mars and then realizes he's not alone. There is another person there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But there's not really a lot of racism in that. There is a communication issue, if I remember right, because they don't speak the same language. But yeah.
Well, he's treated almost like a Tonto.
Well, he looks kind of like in Native American garb, if I remember right. Yeah.
His Friday is treated like a white man Indian sort of thing, back in cliche. Yeah. I've got several influences of design. So like we said, those alien turtles is what I called them. They look like the Wrath of Khan creatures grown up.
They do. They're just gigantic.
The other one I called the alien trapdoor spider is like the Sarlacc pit in Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, it's funny that you went there because I went somewhere else.
Because it has a big thing that reaches out and grabs hold of your foot. You're hanging on. The other guy is holding you and shooting into it to try to kill the tentacle to rescue you. And that is exactly Han Solo. And I mean, it's not Han that does it. It's Luke, and he does it with Han, who's in it.
And Luke does the backwards flip.
Yep.
Like he's on a diving board. Yeah. That I had a different key for that. Well, first of all, the pit and all the surroundings, everything about the planet reminds me of classic Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's like really good television sets. But that creature that comes out of the pit it reminded me of War of the Worlds, with the thing that comes out looking around like it's.
Okay. The
You know,
tripod, the
right?
The viewer, the three-eyed viewer.
Yeah. I was like, this is very War of the Worlds, and then it turns into a hand and grabs somebody or whatever. But
okay, got that. I got that. Huge influence, and ironic that it's one of my genres of the week, is there is a character race in Babylon 5 called the Narn, who are reptilian, who have very extensive makeup. And the lead character that you end up finding throughout the 5-year arc of the series is Jakar. And Jakar is a prophet for Jaquan, which is their god, essentially their prophet. And he is constantly reading the book of Jaquan and understanding the book of Jaquan.
Well, that's pretty heavy-handed.
Which is just like this, and the book, and he wears
Which
it.
came first?
This came first. Babylon 5 came out at the same time as Deep Space.
Straczynski's ripping people off?
Nuh-uh. Inspired by. He was influenced by. It was a key.
So it's like the whole Godzilla versus the beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Yeah. Inspired by.
Inspired by.
And one of my last ones is there is a race of aliens in Deep Space Nine called the Jem'Hadar. And they look
I can't type all this shit.
Well, they look a lot like, if you just Google Jem'Hadar, you'll see the influence of this.
How do you spell it?
J''M Hidar, I think is how it's spelled.
Oh yeah, okay. All right, we'll see.
But they are
that may make a note on the show notes.
they're heavily influenced by this design for the Drach. So yeah, there's that. Those are my keys.
That's all the keys I had too. I mean, I'm sure there's other racial tension movies that could come to mind, but I don't know that they necessarily apply. But the Defiant ones, to me, applies directly. That's great.
Yeah, and like I said,
it's like a sci-fi version of it.
Dances with Wolves, any of those that have
Dances with Wolves.
A person trying to appreciate another culture and slowly realizing the differences. I know there's an episode of UFO, the series that I really like, where a human and the alien, and we've never had any backstory on the aliens at all, but they both end up crashing on the moon. And they both have to try to survive together. And at the very end, he's rescued by the humans, who immediately kill the alien because they're at war with the aliens, even though he's a friend and he saved his life like twice in the episode. And so there's that. It's directly, I think, an influence on this because it came out in the early 70s.
It just occurred to me, but any Sidney Poitier movie from the 60s, 50s, 60s, or 70s even, maybe. I mean, To Sir with Love, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? It's all about learning to appreciate each other's differences. Yes, exactly. In the Heat of the Night's another one. So, I mean, but the thing is, and I don't want to sound racist by saying it, but at the time, Poitier was the point person to make these movies.
Of course, he was perfect
because he was the big African-American star of that time.
So talented.
It wasn't Dwayne Jones. He was around, but he was doing George Romero movies. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, very true. Very good. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for indulging me this week on one that was had some potential, but blew it at the end.
You're more than welcome. I neglected to mention, but I don't have to really, that this is not on the 1001 movies you must see before you die.
No, it is not.
But the message, like I said, the message of this film is great. It's just not always handled right.
Yep. Agreed.
And that's going to do it for this show. Again, folks, we are winding down. We have 4 episodes left.
Wow.
David. And one of them's a redux. So that'll be a special one for you, folks.
Okay.
Actually, I think it's next. Yeah, it's next week. And we hope you enjoyed it. If you're on YouTube watching us, please subscribe, like, and or comment. Those comments do so much because they help people, well, they help get us in front of people, and they also show that people like you are engaged with what we're talking about. If you're listening on the podcast airwaves, we would appreciate a review or a thumbs up on your listening platform as well. If you want other shows, we have other short shows on YouTube that you know about. I'm not going to go through them. And if you want something a little extra enticing, we have bonus content and subscription content over on Patreon.
Yes.
And until next time, David, I will see you in the scary place.
Oh, no. Okay. See you there.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.